Hey neighbors and my fellow holy smokers, this is Christian Smith. I am the leader of the Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality movement and the pastor of the faith community of Atlanta. And I am just so appreciative to you for tuning in to our first episode 0, called Pandemic Proof Theology. This is not the way we intended on starting, but the entire world has been impacted by the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. So we decided to pull together some people from our brilliant cast to talk about this topic because it's affecting everybody across the globe. So call your friends, your family. If you smoke cigars, light up a cigar, pour a drink, and enjoy this conversation with us as we unpack what it means to have pandemic-proof theology, if that's a thing in and of itself. I'll see you when this episode is over.
Hey everybody, welcome to Holy Smokes. This was not supposed to be our first episode, but in light of the coronavirus pandemic and how it's affecting everybody, we decided we would do an emergency first episode. As you can see, these guys are already being silly.
No, dog.
What?
I'm not finna let you do that. The Lord did this. And I want you to give God the glory. Don't put that on like it was. I don't know how this happened. This is the Lord's doing, and it's glorious. So.
Listen.
Stay on the phone. He wants all of it.
He wants all of it, dog.
Yeah.
Give it all to him.
Give it all today.
We're doing what we can to try to respond to what's going on in our community. We're going to ask Grayson to not rub his hands in the microphone. Lord, help us. I don't know what to do with these
Hand
guys.
sanitizer.
This is a demonstration of good
Social
Christ-like
sanitizer,
behavior.
Right. So we're at a undisclosed location. We're semi-outdoors, so you might hear some birds and some cars and stuff. But our normal filming location, Highland Cigar Company, shout out to Highland Cigar, all the employees there who have taken care of us. Thank you so much. They had to shut down for this time frame. So we just came together and decided we wanted to talk about this whole pandemic crisis and how it's affecting everybody, particularly in our churches. So what I want to do is, first of all, lay out the ground rules of Holy Smokes. It's very simple, that we respect each other's lived experience. That's real simple, especially in times like this where people have different theologies, different doctrines that they live by, but somebody's lived experience will trump your doctrine and your dogma any day of the week.
Again.
Somebody's lived experience will trump your doctrine and your dogma any day of the week. Every time I use that word, I feel some kind of way, but I don't know of another word that makes more sense right there. Supersede. There we go.
All right.
Well, no, I think supersede.
No, that's a normal word.
Yeah.
No,
So
put the dollar in.
so that you understand what Grayson just did. We got a dollar jar right here. The dollar jar is because we have a lot of brainy people on this cast, right? So this is a portion of the cast. We have 3 other people who come be with us today. That's Greg DeLoach, Nikki Hardeman, and Karima Green. So, we tend to throw out some words every now and then that maybe not everybody can pick up on.
Isn't it funny that the ladies were like, listen, we can't make it today in the middle of the pandemic.
Listen,
all the guys are like, hey, we coming together. Let's do this.
Yeah, I just pray that my
probably
wife,
had some wisdom.
my wife doesn't kill me.
Well, you'll bring that home.
Exactly. So the dollar jar is about making sure we keep everybody in check with the big words that we use. So if somebody uses a big word that we feel needs to be defined, they got to put $1 in the jar, because we want to make this content that we're doing on Holy Smokes accessible for everybody and not just people with 7 degrees like her Vance.
Right.
So
Was that how we started on?
All 7 of them, Doc. All 7.
Okay. It's a whole thermometer.
I just want to know, are we doing this for the cause of the kingdom, or do we just like smoking and drinking that much that we came together in the pandemic?
I think it's a combination of both.
Oh, yeah.
It's both. All right. We just
Combination of
want
both.
to talk to y'all, but we also want to talk to one another.
So, a lot of stuff is happening. Churches have had to shut down. But before I do that, let me let y'all get to know the different people on the cast. I've already named the 3 people who couldn't be here today. but I want to allow everybody to introduce themselves. My name is Christian. I'm the pastor of the faith community. I'm the leader of the Holy Smokes movement. And today I'm smoking the Upsetters Zola, which is like one of my new favorite sticks. So it's Jamaican and Nicaraguan. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And then I'm drinking Weller today. So I'm gonna start over here with Tiger, then we're gonna work our way around over to Myron. So Tiger, you got it.
Hello everyone, I'm Tiger Gibson. I do not have a cigar today, but I am drinking coffee with a splash of Douce.
Did you need a cigar right quick?
No, I don't need it.
Okay,
I'll wait.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Okay.
We got one for you if you want.
I know you do. That's why I didn't bring them, because I knew y'all had it. I come to smoke y'all.
Freeload.
Cigar squatter.
I was like, the two of y'all there, I put mine right back in the crib. My wife was like, you forgot your cigars? I was like, no, I didn't. I know what to do. That's why I'm going to wait till later. You can come right off asking for stuff. You wait till they offer. You need a stick? Well, yeah, I'll take it. Okay. I'm Tiger Gibson.
I'm Grayson Hester. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the communications director for the faith community.
Yeah.
And I guess by proxy, the Holy Smokes movement. I am not smoking a cigar because in these days, one respiratory infection is enough.
Lord. Oh, God.
Maybe we'll edit that part of it. It's only called Holy Smokes.
Yeah.
Not, holy pandemic.
Any of our sponsors, we do not approve the statements that Grayson just made.
He's responsible for his own shit.
We invite respiratory infections when it comes down to these cigars, so please
There's
don't
going to be a
listen to
quick
them.
cut and then suddenly this chair's empty.
Right.
We don't know what happened.
Where's the guy in the pink?
Pray for him right now. Corona got it.
We had to quarantine him.
We are going to get into so much trouble.
Yes.
Oh, my God. I'm sweating.
Laugh, saints. Just laugh. Laugh is good for the soul.
It is. It's a laugh to keep
This is
from crying.
not all serious. We've been serious all week. We needed a laugh right quick.
Loosen
I
up.
just want y'all to take note of who's making these jokes.
Come on,
It's
now.
not me. It's not me.
We just want to laugh a little
If
bit.
I'm not mistaken, he did say, I am the leader
That's what he said.
of the Holy Smokes movement.
Yeah, Daddy Grace, you got to take it off.
Did you call him Daddy Grace?
And we're just glad to be in the service one more time. Y'all got to smile a little bit, man. It's been a tough week. Let's get through it.
It has. Grayson finished. Whatever it was you were saying.
No, I think he was finished when he said, I don't smoke.
Yeah, we don't let him say anything after that. I'm just joking. Go ahead, Greg.
I'm drinking Douce out of a red Solo cup because didn't read the email all the way through.
Gotta read the email.
But I do have to say real quick that if I were to gather for the recording of a podcast, I'm glad it is a black-dominated podcast. Because if this were a white podcast, we'd be coughing in each other's faces, not washing our legs. We wouldn't be hand sanitizing. We'd be undercooking the meat. And
I didn't know where you were going with this. I'm not gonna lie. I held my breath. As soon as you said I'm glad this is a black-dominated podcast.
I like it. I like how we're starting this thing
I
off.
feel
This is
safe.
going well.
Wait, did you say
Not washing out
they would not
legs.
wash hands and undercook the meat?
I did say that, yes.
Wow.
And he said they weren't washing their legs.
Is that a thing? Just like a little
Man.
water,
Oh, you haven't heard?
Oh no, I only wash from the belly button.
Wow.
Hey man, this outbreak has put us in such a pure state right
Yeah,
now.
I never knew
It's been pure.
I'm
forever.
glad.
Pure hell?
Oh my God. Okay, correct.
That's my word. That's me checking my privilege. Just
You
saying.
you just choose not to wash your legs?
Don't put that on me,
No, I mean,
Ricky
but like
Bobby.
white people. Is that help me out here? Is that
So the context here is that Taylor Swift did an interview where she said that she did not wash her legs in the shower because the soap runs down the body, and then by extension,
The legs are washed.
right? Why would we need to wash our legs when we are the bringers of diseases and therefore immune?
I wish y'all could see how our producer is cracking up right now. Like, he cannot contain
And so
himself.
then another great podcast, The Read.
We are learning something new.
Which is two queer black people did not have any of that, and so they then asked the question, and then white people, many of them responded. It was like, yeah, I don't use washcloths, I don't wash my legs.
My God.
So if you notice,
We are
white
learning
people
so
smell
much
like
today.
wet dog when it rains.
Oh,
Okay.
man, this is something else.
I know we're
Man.
supposed to talk about some things, but I do have a question.
Go, please, Doctor.
You say I don't use washcloths?
This is-
washcloths?
For many of the Caucasian
Caucasians.
persuasion, that is the case.
So y'all just
This is
shower
really going
gel?
down. Alright, stop. Carmance, introduce yourself. Carmance, introduce yourself.
Holy Smokes movement. You didn't lost
This
control.
is going south really fast. Carmance, go.
I am the regulator of the confusion. I try to be as much like God as the old people would say, regulate my troubled mind. Consider me the regulator. I am Kervance Ross, the kingmaker, and I'm so excited to be here. I think these other introductions have trumped my introduction.
Whoa.
So that's all I got. I'm done.
My name is Myron Randall. I'm just glad to be out of the house.
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. What you
I'm smoking a sweet Maduro. My leader directed me to PD Cigars in Stockbridge. Best hand-rolled Maduro, and I'm drinking my signature Cafe Royale.
Amen.
I got this coffee from Burger King, sponsorship on the way. Cream, sugar, and this time instead of Hennessy, I'm doing Douce as the contributing executive chaser of this outlook. So
The regulator
Yes, the
of the
regulator
kick.
of the coffee. Yes,
There it is.
yes.
You know you special when you say signature.
Not my signature.
Okay. I got it.
That. I was like, Kervance got silk pajamas. You do not say that unless you own a couple of pairs of silk pajamas.
The two-piece set. The two-piece set.
And
There it is.
and it's got to fit you into his schedule.
Myron Randall. I'm glad to be out of the house. That's all I
Amen.
got. I am smoking Insidious. The father of the Holy Smokes movement gave me this. This is probably a huge cigar, so that's why I'm lit like this. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm drinking too. I'm drinking Weller.
Well,
Little Weller, yeah. It came from the freezer, so it's got a nice little chill to
nice
it.
little chill, yes
Yeah,
sir.
but it warms me up on the inside.
So listen, I would say we're gonna move to more serious matters, but we're a silly group, man. We have fun, we crack jokes. So
Also,
and
to point out the sun is out.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've been quarantined. It was good being quarantined, when it was kind of gray outside, but not at the sun. It's getting harder and harder out here.
Yeah, I mean, even though with us getting together, this is kind of an extension of quarantine because we're not in no public place. We got
That's true.
So if anybody's wondering, there are less than 10 people here. We assure you, we have 8 people total a part of this entire production. of
Mayor
this.
Keisha Lance Bottoms, we are under the regulations, so
Yes.
we're good.
And shout out to
I
you,
wasn't
Mayor
even
Keisha
scared of
Lance.
her.
You did a good job, girl. You
I wasn't
hold it
scared of
down.
the mayor. I was scared of my wife. She was like, "How many people gonna be over there?" I was like, 7.
But
The
then,
number of
good number.
completion.
That's a good number.
but then you add the Trinity, the 3 persons in one, and suddenly we're at 11, and I don't know what to do.
Oh god.
Look, that mean I got to go.
So
Suddenly Unitarian over here.
all right, y'all shut up for a second. So the reality is a lot of people are in panic mode right now. I mean, this is a really serious situation, and a lot of times we laugh to keep from crying because that's all we can do. Because if we get too caught up in just the constant negative information without any type of reprieve, then some of us can go crazy during this process. So
That's right.
the laughter is good for the soul, and a lot of times it helps us to just work through some of these very serious matters. So we do want to also acknowledge those people who have, lost loved ones as a result of this pandemic, because it's really serious. People are grieving right now while at the same time trying to keep themselves safe. But this is Holy Smokes, and we thought, what better way to introduce Holy Smokes to the world than by talking about this topic today, especially considering what people of faith are dealing with. Because your theology functions a certain way when things are going well, but in the midst of crisis, that really puts your theology to the test. That puts your perspective of God to the test when you go through something like this. And for many of us, this is something we've never seen in our entire lives. So today, with this pandemic-proof theology episode, the question that I want to throw out there is, how do you think this coronavirus pandemic affects either your perspective of God or other people's perspective of God based on their theology? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that God operates best in moments of chaos so that he can create a cleansed perspective. And I think from a Western lens, we generally only see God when he affects us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As I made a post about 2 weeks ago, if Corona had been contained to China alone, we would literally still be talking about our birthday celebration, the babies, ladies, outbreaks and foolishness, and what we were going to wear on Easter.
Yeah.
But now that it made it to our shores, we immediately created fear theology. It's the end times. God is coming back. These are signs of the ends of the world. Are you literally saying that God only implements end time moments when it happens to America?
Come on today.
And if that's the major concern, it shows how insensitive Western Christianity is to a global God.
Seriously.
And I think now God puts us in a position where we have to be confined so that we can be more caring, that we have to be insulated so we can be more impactful, so that we have to be quarantined so we can give a quality perspective of the God we say we serve. So I think it's shifting our theology, or highlighting to us how much foolishness simmers in a theology that makes us comfortable.
Yeah, that was good.
Next question.
What then do we say?
Nowhere to go for there. Next time, not give the ball to Jordan first.
Touche, right?
Nah, y'all, we got a team full of Jordans here. Y'all say what y'all got to say.
So, were you going to say something, Tiger?
Go ahead, I can.
Okay. So the quick, there's one thing I want to focus on, but the quick thing that I want to focus on, and I'm always focusing on, is not only, that was brilliant all that you were saying, the Western centric, the American exceptionalist way of looking at things, that right, until it reaches our shores, it's not a problem, because we do that with any problem that the world currently and always is facing, and that America worsens and benefits from. But at the same time, the greater existential threat, which is climate crisis, is now experiencing, I would say, its first victory. And that's not to say that this is a good thing that's happening to, like, in the individual level. It is a horrible situation for so many people. But widening the lens, there was so many things that I felt personally and others felt were hurtling towards disaster, whether it's climate crisis, economic inequality, complete stagnation in Washington and other political arenas. And suddenly, the imagination of our legislators and our people just blew open overnight, because suddenly this virus comes in, and I think it's providing us one of the best opportunities we've so far gotten to actually address climate change, to see what happens when we stop moving for 2 weeks. The Venice starts to experience clear water for the first time in decades. The pollution levels over China were eradicated virtually. And so while, yes, in the individual level, I don't want to downplay the depth of the grief, but in addition to what Kurt Vance is saying, because I agree wholeheartedly, there is always an existential threat that we are treating with American Western eyes, just like this American optimism that everything's going to be okay because it has to be okay, because we have to smile, because we have to go buy things, I guess.
Because we're American.
Because we're American.
Right.
And if we're not happy, then, how are we going to sell the gospel to people?
And we truly believe as we go, so goes the world.
Right.
Yeah. So God operates based on how things are going in our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those are things that have actually given me more hope and imagination than I've felt in years, seeing the ways in which suddenly we can find it within our hearts to give money to people with income bracket adjustments.
Right.
2 weeks ago, would we ever have thought that Ted Cruz would be agreeing with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? And now look at him.
You know what I just heard in what you just said?
What's up?
This idea of a Sabbath principle. Right? That when we stopped and when we paused, we started to see results differently than the results that we were receiving. And I'm guilty of always over spiritualizing things.
Of course.
So I'm just gonna go with it right here. So what if we use this as a universal principle and learn how to take Sabbath in our own lives?
Yes.
And then maybe our waters will run clean again. And maybe we'll be able to breathe a little bit better if we learn how to pause and just stop and take a break. We've needed that. For a very long time.
Late stage capitalism benefits greatly from our tiredness and our harriedness and our hurriedness.
Absolutely.
And suddenly I'm less stressed and more well rested.
Yeah.
And this isn't all about me, because I again want to reiterate that people are dying and it is a crisis. But in my little world of experience, it's been Sabbath.
It has.
I guess listening to you quickly helps us understand that God is a little bit, let me say it differently. I believe that from a homiletical pantheist perspective, you can see.
That's
$2. $2. Come on now. Homiletical pantheist?
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either.
Magic
If-
City
if-
is closed, so throw those ones.
Yeah, you don't need them ones.
If you are viewing this podcast,
You never
please
need them.
Google that right now.
Let me,
Put this $2 in the jar. Put this $2 in the jar.
I didn't
please.
think that was a big deal. Let me break this concept down. I believe that God is in everything. I believe that you can see God everywhere. He inspires us to be able to see Him in multiple places. And I think we minimize our theology to just the Bible, when, for me, if it happens in the movies, it's a precursor to what's going on in life. And I think most writers have the undertone of biblical writers, where they foreshadow what's happening, not just from a spiritual standpoint, but they see stuff happening. This is actually the first installment of The Purge, because as we are sitting here talking to a representative from the CDC a couple of days ago, if we just learn how to sit still for 14 days, we could totally clear this pandemic away, and we could make sure that the world is cleaner. But our inability to sit still, to be still and know, puts us in a position where we're extending the pandemic. But the problem is, we don't realize that God is literally teaching us how to be at peace so that He can cleanse us from all of our issues. And I think this is a big dynamic, because you're having clarity in the air care. You're having clarity in how we see each other. We're having clarity in water. Some of us, I sent a post to Christian and a couple of the fellas the other day. It said athletes are now at home getting to know their families like they've never seen before.
Amen.
And they're sitting there going, so what do y'all do every day? What would consider imprisonment is really interpersonal relationship development. Because now I'm learning, man, it's really okay to be sitting still. And for you who push the Sabbath so much, I think this is an extended Sabbath. If you can sit down for 14 days, I believe that that's a small fraction of the reality that many of us in 40 years have never sat down.
Right.
So for us to be able to just sit down for 14 days, you're less than 2% of 40 years that you've never taken time for God to have time with you. And I think it's necessary for us to be quarantined to learn how to care about ourselves and the people that matter.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think with the athletes and different people that now get an opportunity to be with their families, I think all of us, where I'm not an athlete, but I'm constantly on the go. I'm constantly on the grind. And a lot of times for us to make time for my wife and my kid, it's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's dinner and a movie or whatever. Because of scheduling, because your mind is always on, I gotta go grind, I gotta go do this, or I gotta go do that. It's good to just do nothing.
Yes.
And the guy was telling me about, he's lost a significant amount of weight, his blood pressure is better. And I said, what do you do? He's a comedian. Shout out to comedian Swift. He says, on certain days, all I do is drink water to give my digestive system a break because it's constantly working. And I'm like, that's just how we are. We're constantly working. So now some people didn't marry the right person, so it feels like prison. You know,
That's getting revealed.
Not you, though. Not you.
me.
No, not you.
No, yeah.
I'm so glad me and my wife like each other.
yes,
Same here, man.
Like my wife and I, we went on a cruise for like 7 days. Every day we're together. We're always together anyway, but there's people literally be like, yo, Tiger, there's no way I can do 7 days. I do a 3-day cruise. So there's some brothers like, when this pandemic going in, so I can get back to the grind. But it's healthy. Well, to a degree, it's healthy for us to get perspective. And I believe God wants some alone time with his people too. So he's forcing you to work remotely. He's forcing your edifice, the church, to close. There's, you know, the people are worried about this precipitous decline of money that they won't get. But I think it's bigger than that. It's about shutting down, letting everything heal.
Well, I think that's a big piece because statistics show that society changes every 4 years, but church, society, and culture changes every 20 years.
20 years.
So for the church to actually sit down, the way this virus is affecting theology, it is forcing the church to literally have 16 days to catch up with what everything has been going on in society. And that means that we got 2 extra days of grace to really figure out what God has been saying as opposed to what we've been saying he said.
That's good.
So I got a question.
Sure.
That's
I got a
good.
question. And then we're going to end with this question. This was just like a primer for Holy Smokes. So in light of this pandemic and how it's affecting church, how it's affecting our ability to gather, what are some things that people may have thought was important about their relationship to God prior to the pandemic that now we're finding out it's not nearly as important as we thought it was before now?
I think the degree to which people, straight people, have been, oh my God, I can't be with my wife. I can't imagine being with her for 7 days or whatever, just shows that we have idolized marriage and thought that was more important to our relationship with God than it actually is. And I'm saying that from
Crazy.
I did not see that coming.
I didn't either.
Please dig in a little deeper.
You got to go
sir.
deeper with that.
Yeah.
And this is something I was wanting to say in the first question, so I'm trying to tie it together. But this narrative of people have never experienced this before is true, but flashback 40 years to a time when there's a disease ravaging a community. No one's speaking about it. The president's not even saying its name. Ronald Reagan and Nancy, just say no. Just shut up.
He felt that came from yeah. Continue.
So
I felt
that was killing everyone who, and there was no reason given, no reason found for a long time, and in a way much more grotesque than, and not to say that one's worse than the other, but in a way where you would watch your loved one who couldn't be married to you legally suffer and die with welts all over their body, completely turning against themselves in terms of their immune system, and you found no support from the world that just kept moving along as if nothing was happening until 60,000 people had died, and then and then the great communicator communicated it. And so the queer perspective here is we found meaning in that community in the midst of imminent and inevitable and inexplicable death.
Yeah.
And a pandemic that is still going on and adversely affecting black and brown communities because white gays got the cures and the PrEP and then just went on along as if it was over when it's not. But this, to me, reveals just how shallowly straight people in general regard that most sanctified, like holy union of marriage, that if you devalue it to such an extent that you got married for the appearances, and you got married for the gain, you got married for the job, you got married for whatever, and now that you're forced to be with the person you love, and then you're like, I can't do it. Well, we've been doing it, us queer people, when decades before we ever actually could, and we find it in our houses, we find it in our balls, drag balls, I should say. Clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's going to give the definition of drag balls to clear this up.
Just Google the show Pose. That'll show you what you need, because I don't want to take up more time than I already have, especially as the white person in the room. But all I'm saying is, this is a great time to learn from people, not just queer people, for sure, but people who have histories of trauma, which everyone in this circle does, to find out what matters when all that we've convinced ourselves matters doesn't. And we're revealing that. And so thank God that the leaders are naming this disease. Thank God that people are working at it. But just picture for a second, what might it feel like to have everyone in your own community, after you've been kicked out by your parents and your churches and your everything, to then die, and Ronald Reagan, the leader, literally laughing about it. Yeah. So we've never seen this before, but we've seen this before.
Well, that's good.
I don't
that's
think
good.
we need to say anything else after that.
I mean, but I'm going to leave it open in case you might have something on your mind that you think was important prior to this that is no longer important. I mean, he brings a great Q plus perspective, but anybody else?
Yeah, I'll say the need to be in a physical edifice to have worship. I love live church, live worship, but being quarantined has forced us to, number one, keep up with the times, upgrade our technology, number two, but then number three, bring you to a place where you can have worship by yourself, prayer by yourself, prayer with the people in your household. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think the need of, I gotta be in the sanctuary to have church. Well, I'm the temple. I can have church here. 2 or 3 gathered in my name. He's in the midst. Jesus is in the midst. So I think that insatiable need to be like in the Sunday morning rush, although I love it, it's not as important to my individual relationship with God.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing. People tie gathering with giving. My friend Smith said that a long time ago.
Now, who dat?
His name is Smith. You may have heard of him. Even his dress-down clothes are very nice. P squared is typically the label you'll see. All I have is a handkerchief at this point.
Oh, God.
'Cause I'm saving my money to see when this coronavirus passes. Second, people have tied gathering with giving. And I think a lot of mature people have now learned how to give digitally, saying, although I'm not there physically, my gift is still there for when we return back to the edifice that we love. You know, things can still be right.
You know what? I think we should connect giving to value. Maybe nobody gives to your church because they don't find any value
in it. That's
and
true.
so when you add some value, when you help people, when you motivate people, when you give them what they need, maybe they'll give to your congregation. You know what I mean?
Spend money on your treasure is where your heart is.
When we see where the funds are going, you know, when we see that there's something coming out of this, right? Then maybe we'll give.
Maybe we'll give.
All right, I didn't mean to throw that in.
No, you throw it in. That's a very good point.
Value is what we should correlate our giving toward.
Yeah, there are people that get up and fight. Y'all don't give no money. Like, this service is whack.
Yeah, that's why I'm not giving no money.
I'm about to, I can't
You up there
see
screaming
myself.
at me to give.
Matter of fact,
I want you to give me some gas money for coming here.
Right, I feel like you should give me
You
some
do
money.
refund me
You
this
wasted
back.
my whole
Yeah.
afternoon.
In order to get that church so big, you had to go outside the city limits where people were living and had to
Right.
drive 40 minutes to
There
get
you go.
there.
There you go.
I guess for me then, I think it's clarified the difference between church and service.
All right.
That's true.
Simply because we've been so focused on having church that we've not done any service.
It's crazy.
When people can't come to your church, the question has to be, are you still doing service? Can people see that you're serving the present age? And many of our churches have made, up until this point, just come into my building
Right.
the reality. And now that people can't come to their building, their community doesn't even know they exist.
Right.
That's true.
So it shifts our reality that after this is over with, most churches are not going to have anybody coming back.
Oh my goodness.
Simply because they didn't see you do any service while they were gone. And we're in this space where there's a whole group of churchmen and church women who've never thought about going to visit somebody else, going to
There's
another
still
space.
homeless people out there.
And now they see churches who do service and do more than church. And when this is over, they've seen their church from a lens that they've never thought about. And when their church opens their doors, their church will be in an internal pandemic. Simply because they missed the moment to break out and challenge people with service. Christ has never you can count on your hand the amount of times Christ was in church, but you cannot count how many times he was in service.
That's right.
And we are now shifting the reality that the people who had no service won't have any church.
Wow.
Yo, that was so real. When this is gone and people return back, these churches are going to have a struggle. That is so real, bro.
Because now I can see I can exist without you.
Oh my
I can exist
goodness.
without you.
Yeah. Because we weren't creating value from the get-go. And I was only going because that's where mom went, that's where dad went, and it was tradition as opposed to me receiving something
Spiritual
from
muscle memory.
That's what it was. Spiritual muscle memory.
That's
crazy.
good.
This is putting pressure on pastors to up their game. Right? You now have to digitally give a sermon.
Yep.
You don't have my man on the Hammond to carry you through. You have to say something good enough to capture someone's attention digitally. On top of that, the service piece. People are looking at the church like, all right, church is closed, but what are y'all doing? There's still people outside homeless. Still people that need sanitizer. There's still people that need help. It's let's go.
Yeah, I think, to kind of wrap this up, where we are is figuring out a different understanding of what it means to be the arms, legs, feet, hands of Christ.
You got it.
Where we can't physically connect with people. So what does that mean in a time like this? I think churches and people of faith are learning that in this time frame. And I think our faith lives will never be the same as a result.
They shouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be the same, and we need to take this time to reevaluate and reassess what it means for us to be a church, what it means for us to be connected in faith, what it means for us to serve one another. I want to say I'm incredibly proud of my church, the faith community, for
You're here.
for our preparedness for this situation. The transition honestly seemed pretty seamless, because we were trying our best prior to this point to take advantage of every media, every avenue to minister to the people in our community. So transitioning to an online space was just a flip of a switch. Like, hey, we always, have a digital component anyway. We're just going to stick to the digital component exclusively for right now. So I think churches need to really start thinking about how do we diversify, right? Because if all you do well is Sunday morning, you're a one-trick pony.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah.
And what is Jesus riding to Jerusalem on? Not ponies.
Oh my God. Here we go with Grayson and the puns. So it's important that we think about the various ways that we can minister to people and that we can be the collective body of Christ. And I'll end with this, because a lot of times, people reference that scripture. I don't remember exactly where it's found. It talks about your bodies are a temple. And we say, well, that's why you shouldn't be smoking cigars, because your body's a temple.
Or only eat kale.
Exactly. Or, you got to be vegan if you want to treat your body right. Well, the reality is, and nothing against veganism, vegetarianism, nothing against any of that. But the reality is that's a misappropriation of that text, because the text is not saying that your body is a temple. It's saying our collective bodies make up the temple.
Got it.
So how do we keep up the temple in a time like this where we don't have the physical building to gather? How do we still remain and live out our lives as the body of Christ? And I think coronavirus is helping a lot of us to learn that. So I want to encourage everybody.
Doing it now?
Yeah. I want to encourage everybody, if you are in a privileged quarantine position.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, if quarantine for you is a vacation, because you got all the food, all the liquor, everything that you want in your house, consider somebody else who might be in your sphere of influence who doesn't have it as good as you during this time, and try to think of a way you can be a blessing to those individuals. Because some people are single parents, got multiple kids, one income household, and that income just got cut off. So let's think about that while we're stocking up on food and toilet paper. I still don't understand the whole toilet paper piece. But let's think about that during this time frame. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this first episode. Like I said, this was not the plan. The next time you see us, we'll be introducing like it's the first episode, because we pre-record and then we bring stuff out. But hey, it is what it is. We're living in a trying time, something we've never seen before. So thank you for being a part of this. Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality. We'll see you next time. And y'all stay safe, wash your hands, practice social distancing, stay out of the clubs and the bars and the social settings, and let's do it.
Face.
Right. Let's do what we can to work our way through this. So thank you everybody for being a part.
Thank you. Cheers.
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 With that, yeah.
I ran out of coffee.
Hey family, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Now here's what I need you to do. Share this with somebody that you love. Whether it be your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your friends at work, your pastor. Share it with somebody. Spread this goodness as far as you possibly can. And then also, thank you again for supporting us on Patreon. We're going to continue to bring you as much content as we possibly can. So, if you have any ideas for topics that you would like for us to cover in future episodes, please send those to us. You can message us on Patreon. You can also hit up our DMs on Instagram. That's at Holy Smokes Movement. Or you can shoot us an email at holysmokes@thefaithcommunity.org. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next time right here on Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality.